fact, you could lay on this one, and I can lay on that one. Well, we're going to have a lot to eat that he baked. Hey, Taylor, come on up here. There's some front row people.
All right.
Or you can lay on the couch here.
Right there, just spread out.
Hi, Taylor. Good, how are you?
Good.
1%. All right, Chef Brad. Steve. Let our presenter go, Steve. Ooh, I love that song. I gotta wait for that song.
Have you ever done a night where everyone just sings? That's all it is.
We did do one like that. And then we've had more singing than others. Because there was a group that writes years ago. They had, and so we did. We sang a lot of hymns.
How are you?
Jane, you get closer. Jane won't bite. Okay. I know you're good.
Which is unusual.
It is unusual.
Mike.
What's a fun fact about it? Nothing new. Lots of No, I was born and raised. So we're all in tightening mode for at least the next couple years. Obsessed with anything two-wheel. Fingers crossed.
Yes, all of our fingers
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your
And here we are. Welcome, everyone. I love that everybody's having fun talking. That's what we're here for, is to have community and talk. I want to thank Brian and Amy McConkey, who are not here. This is their shared space with Jim and Judy, who are not here. They're out of town. So they were kind enough just like 3 days ago to offer their home because I had made a big boo-boo. I had scheduled July's host for May. And I was very fortunate that, 3 days ago, Jenna Spangler texted me and said, I thought I was hosting in June. I'm so sorry. I'll find another place. So anyway, always grateful to those who host these gatherings. Appreciate being willing to do that. Let's see. And very grateful to Chef Brad Peterson for being here. I can tell spring is in the air in summer because our numbers are not as great as usual. I know a number of people had things going on, including the McConkeys. And Jameis, where'd you go? Where's Jameis? There he is. Famous Jameis. Famous Jameis. Always appreciate you and Karen coming and providing your lovely music. It's, if you get a chance to know, I did a Think Again with Jameis some years ago. That was during COVID. Yeah. But, I know probably all of you better than you know each other in the part, but you all have beautiful stories and interesting stories. And so I hope you get to hear each other's stories. I value Karen a lot coming because she's not part of the LDS faith. She's grew up Catholic here and has interesting experiences being in the minority here. And then Jameis has his own very interesting story, and I mean, you all do. And so grateful that we have a diverse group come. My good buddy Shane's over here. I grew up with him in Brookings for a few years, in 7th and 8th grade. Hey, welcome. And so he's here visiting and helping his kids out that live here. And so anyway, it's been fun to have him here. Let's see. So as you know, this is like this 13th year of trying to create a safe space for people to come and share their hearts and minds and questions and be curious. And as most of you know, because I think everyone's been here before, this is an open group, so you're always welcome to invite anybody you would like. And if you're not on my email list, you know how to get on it. You can talk to me, or you can go to the website. And I'm always interested in ideas and feedback, so to make the group better. So please feel free to do that. We haven't done this in a while, but because it's a smaller group, I think it would be nice. The challenge is to be disciplined enough that when we go around the room and you say something that's on your heart, something that's on your mind, that you keep it to one sentence. I guess it could be a long sentence. But one breath. So that we kind of get, a sense, and Brad can get a sense of who's in the room and what's going on in your lives right now. Jane, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll start.
That was your sentence.
I didn't give her any notice either, so
Yeah.
she's just as...
I'll go with what's on my mind. Jay and I are leaving for Croatia in a little less than 2 weeks, and we're very interested in exploring a new corner of the world that we've not been to. So that was in one breath.
Hey, well done. And this is Jane, who's always gratefully running the Zoom for us,
I'm so
for our
grateful
Zoom.
to be running the Zoom because
Thank you,
there's
Jane.
nobody on it tonight. So
Hey,
for some
I don't know,
it must be spring summer.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just it's
Okay,
sad.
take it away.
Okay.
Take in the breath.
I'm Karen Salas. Happy to be here among people who love exploring the gray areas of belief and life and all that. I am currently exploring what it means to live with chronic pain, and that's it.
That's hard. Sorry. I should have said also, you don't have to share. You can just say pass. So never.
I don't know what I'm supposed to share, but
No, that's perfect. But I know. Well, that's great. James?
I'm the pain that Karen lives with.
You're the chronic pain that she lives with.
Also, currently, we're using the porta potty at our house because our sewer broke. That's on my mind right now. Yeah.
All right. Taylor?
Taylor Webb, and on my mind right now is being a parent is wonderful, but also hard and endless.
Okay, that back row back there.
Alan Jones. What's on my mind is that there don't appear to be any moral wars going on right now, and I'm tired of all of them. We shouldn't be doing this as a people, as a world family.
Amen. Amen.
So I'm Cam Jones, and today on my mind was commencement at University of Utah, watching our babies grow up and leave the nest and go out and get jobs. It was such a special day.
Wow. Yeah. You teach music up there at the U? Yeah.
Rick Cassidy, and I guess what's been on my mind lately is just the plight of children around the world. Adults are causing most of the trouble.
Causing chronic pain.
Causing hunger, causing them to lose their homes, maiming children. It just seems to be, shortcutting, or I should say, diminishing their opportunities for education. It just seems like everywhere that's becoming a problem around the world.
It's hard. Feel it. Okay, Jordan?
I'm here because I love to have my loved ones around and stay with me, but I hate to cook. So I'm
You're in the right place.
That's why I'm here.
Our guest is going to talk more about that. Okay, I'm Stephen Parkin. I'm a public school teacher. What's on my mind is about the rate that time passes faster each year. Really. And part of the reason I enjoy teaching is it has very clear markers of the passage of the academic year.
That's true.
Just to name one example,
One.
just last week, each of the grades has a different color T-shirt that's printed for them to represent their grade as part of what's called Spirit Week. So teachers dress up to match the grade that they teach. And as I went to my closet, on the top of my T-shirt pile was my Spirit Week T-shirt from 1 year ago. And I thought, wait a minute, I just got this last week. Yet here it was, a full year had passed.
Flies, doesn't it? It's
From-
crazy.
From April of 2025 to now 2026, 12 months just went that quickly.
Yeah, I feel you. Shane.
Well, I was invited to come, but what's been on my mind is my granddaughter I lost last year due to bullying and transitioning, and seeing her go through that and help her the best I could.
That was painful. Yeah. Thank you, Shane. Martina?
Martina McBride, the one and only. On my mind currently is we're in a very pretty high level stress phase of life, so how to navigate that without falling apart and having time for recreation and enjoyment of life.
Your kids are how old?
9, 7, and 7.
9, 7. Got twins.
Fun stuff.
Yeah. Kids are the easy part right now, though. Mike McBride. We are in a stressful phase, but I'm trying to channel the bison and walk through the storm. Face the storm.
Referring to
get through it.
Bronze bison up there.
Yeah. Get through it a little bit quicker.
That's good. Well, okay. Brad, where are you? Take it away. Yeah, he's taller than me.
Well, what's on my mind is it's a small turnout tonight, which I never worry about that. That is what's on my mind is how you guys get to enjoy all the refreshments.
Double.
That's double and triple. Yeah, yeah.
I saw those.
Yeah. So anyway, I never worry about the amount of people that come because I lecture all over. And a lot of times I go to Relief Societies and the Relief Society presidents are always worried about, oh, we're so sorry. But I never worry about that because the people that need it are the ones that come. And so that's my philosophy about life. I never worry about it.
Makes me feel a little better.
Oh yeah, I never worry about it. In our home we do, and Jay's been there, we do third Sunday dinner once a month. And I never worry about who's going to show up. I never worry about how much I have to prepare. And we never know how many people are going to show up. It could be 20, but it's never really 20. It's usually closer to 50 or 60 people that show up. And that's small for us. When we were in Arizona, we would have, our largest one was 227 people showed up for dinner.
Going to your house?
It's our house. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
So I just want to introduce myself first. I'm a native of Arizona, born and raised in Show Low, the White Mountains of Arizona. I don't know if you've heard about it. A horrible place to grow up. We were talking a little bit earlier about abuse in school, and I can't remember a day growing up that I wasn't abused in one way or another from first grade all through high school. It was just, but it's beautiful. Abuse can really turn you into a better person if you look at it that way. So, but it was a horrible place to grow up, and part of the problem was in that small town is that it was a very small town, kind of a Mormon community, and we weren't active members of the Mormon faith. And my mom was probably the most beautiful woman in town. but she happened to be also the local bartender. So all the women hated her, and so that hate would go home to they would talk about it in their families, and then the kids would take it out on me at school. So it was pretty rough because I wasn't LDS, I wasn't a jock, I wasn't a hippie. There were certain things you had. All the groups, and I was none of those groups. And I'll just be kind of transparent, I was actually very feminine too, as a young boy. So my name at school was faggot, queer, gay, and that's another reason I got beat up all the time. Although I never identified as being gay, but I got beat up all the time for it. So anyway, but I survived school, amazingly enough, with a lot of brokenness that I've had to work on through the years, but isn't that kind of what it's about? Just overcoming other people's becoming. So anyway, so then I got married. I served a mission for the LDS Church in the Caribbean, which was a beautiful experience. And then I moved to Mesa, Arizona, and met my wife. We just had our 42-year anniversary this week. We have 5 amazing kids and 7, almost 8 grandkids, and being a grandpa is the best. Oh my goodness, it's so cool. You can spoil them. And so my wife, we're so different. I don't even know why we've been married together for so long, but we're so different. Her philosophy of being a grandma is being a mama grandma, right? Where she still thinks she's the mom. And I keep telling her, you're not the mom, you're the grandma. And my philosophy of being the grandpa is, I am no part being a dad. I can spoil them and do whatever I want with them. And the philosophy is when they come to my house is, you guys can have whatever you want, just tell grandpa, and I'll make sure it happens. And I do, and it drives my wife crazy because I do spoil them a little bit. So anyway, my career, I grew up, when I was 12 years old, I started working in a local cafe in Sholo. My mom was a waitress in town, and so I went to work at 12 years old. And I just kind of got stuck in the restaurant business, and that's kind of where I've been most of my life. I've owned cafes, I've pretty much done everything in the restaurant business that you can imagine, and I love it. I love food, and that's what we're going to talk about, food. And then I've also I did 40 shows for BYU TV a few years ago actually. And that was so fun. They're streaming now if you want to watch them. In fact, 10 years ago, grains really weren't that popular when I did the show. And it was 40 shows on cooking with grains. So each show we would take one grain and show you what to do with it. And they're streaming them on BYU TV now if you want to watch them. That was one of the funnest things I ever did. I loved it.
What's it called?
It's called Fusion Grain Cooking. And you can just find it. They have it on the little thing there.
So name some of the grains for people that may not know them.
I didn't know there's 40 grains.
Yeah, I mean,
40
40
episodes.
Yeah, there are. I mean, quinoa, amaranth, einkorn. There's different quinoas, red, white, and black. Kamut, all the barleys, all the rices. There's a lot of grains, and there's so much you can do with them. And I've had arguments with people about this for years, especially in our community where we have all these fad diets, and people are like, no, you can't eat carbs. Well, it's the simple carbs that destroy you, not the complex carbs. And grains are complex carbs. They're absolute perfect nutrition for you. In fact, I used to be really overweight because I'm a chef, and my philosophy is you have to eat everything, right? And I ate everything. And that's how I justify it. And so I thought, you know what, I really need to work on getting rid of some of this weight. So I went on the whole grain, not the whole grain, what is it, that 31-day thing that they do, where you cut out sugar and dairy for 30 days. And I went on that, and I lost tons of weight. And then when I went off of it, I did exactly what they said to do, and I gained it all back within a short period of time. So then I thought, because I deal with grains, I thought, I am going to do a whole grain 31, where I go 31 days and I eat all the whole grains I want. Cut out the sugar, cut out the dairy. We did allow yogurt if you made it yourself. But I lost like 70 pounds, and I've never gained it back. And the 31 days really helped me understand how to eat grains more. So I eat a lot of grains. I think they're great, and I incorporate them in. In fact, when my children were growing up, it was kind of funny that people would come to dinner and and they would say, what are we eating? And my children would look at them and say, you know what, the rule around here is don't ask, just eat it. Because you never knew what grain it was. But grains are really fun. So now for my career, I actually kind of diverse. I'm a certified coach, life coach, and I coach mostly men. But I do a lot of culinary coaching too, where I'll coach women on how to get back in control of their kitchens and that kind of thing. But I do a lot of coaching for men, and a lot of my coaching is with issues that men deal with today, as far as connecting with other men. Men aren't very good at making friends. Have you guys noticed that? Men aren't good at it. They have a really hard time, and especially with men that really understand how to make friends, they don't know how to deal with that. I've had to train my ward because the men there were just, when I kind of moved into the ward, they just didn't know how to accept me because I hug everybody and it was just almost too much for them. And now I've got them all trained to where they all hug me and it's perfect. In fact, when we went through COVID, they told me, when they said you could start coming back, they said, some of the members said, Brad, you really shouldn't come back to church. And I was like, oh, why? Because you don't know how to respect boundaries. Like the 6 feet distance, And I was like, okay, I won't come back. And I was perfectly happy to stay home. I loved it. And so finally the bishop came over one day and he said, Brad, you need to come back. And it was still the 6 feet apart that you had to stand apart from people. So I said, oh, do I have to? He said, yeah, we need you. And so I went back to church and I walked into church that Sunday and my bishop was so wonderful. 6 feet distance in front of the whole congregation, he just walks up to me and throws his arms around me and hugs me and says, welcome back. And I whispered in his ear, I'm only here for you. He said, I know. Thank you so much. But anyway, I've had to train all of them to hug. We have one man in our ward who, he just does not hug. And you'll go up to hug him and he'll say, do not hug me. And his wife will say, but you can hug me. So I do a lot of life coaching for men. And my coaching for men, I do a lot with same-gender attraction and pornography and those kind of things that are really things in our culture that we deal with a lot that no one even talks about. I mean, heaven forbid you bring up the word masturbation in a church meeting. People just totally don't know how to deal with that. And I don't have a problem talking about those things, so I do a lot of coaching. In fact, this is kind of a funny story. I was coaching a young man recently, and his parents approached me, and they wanted me to be his life coach. And both of them, they said, Brad, we think he has a problem with the M-word. I went, what? They said, the M-word. And I said, no wonder he has a problem with the M-word. You can't even say it out loud. So I was teaching this young man, and he didn't have a problem. He was just a normal young man. And so I told him one day, I said, could you do me a favor? Just randomly walk through the house one day when your parents are there and just yell out the word masturbation. And he just died laughing. Anyway, a great kid. So anyway, that's one of the things I do. And then I also travel all over the country. I'm getting ready to go to Missouri. And I do what we call Chef Brad events, where someone invites me in their home for like 4 or 5 days. And they invite whoever wants to come. They have to pay, of course, but we do, like in Missouri, I'm going to do 3 classes a day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And they just come and I cook all day long. And it's beautiful. Oh my goodness, I love it. It's so much fun. So that's kind of what I do now. I do have a bakery in my basement. That's why I have some pastries here. But these, I'm only open 2 days a week. But these I did bake fresh for you today. So.
And you live all the way down.
I'm in Orem. I'm in Orem. Yeah, I'm in Orem. So. And I do.
Tell me about the soul, the name of your group for the men.
I have cards here. I have cards here, and on the card is I pass these out all the time. Is the invitation to Third Sunday dinner. So we invite whoever. I mean, a couple months ago we had this young girl there, and some of the members of my community were saying, "Who is that girl? She looks familiar." I said, "Of course, she's a cashier down at Macy's." What's she doing here? Well, I invited her, of course. That's why she's here. So when I'm out, I just invite people, so we never know who's going to show up for dinner. And it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So when I have cards, you guys can pick one up. But on the back, it has my social media. Instagram is Love Chef Brad, and then my website is chefbrad.com, and then Needing Brotherhood is my site for men. And you're welcome to go there. You can sign up. We send out beautiful newsletters that really teach men how to connect better with other men. And it's kind of sad in our culture. We need each other so much, and yet, and COVID didn't help that at all. And yet we just don't know how to connect. We've lost that thing about connecting with people. I mean, it used to be years ago where there were deeper connections because we would build houses together and do things together. Now we live these solo lives to where we don't. And that's kind of what I'm all about now, is just teaching people how to get together. I just published my new book, and it's called Food is Love, Love is Food. It's available on Amazon. But it's about ministry. And it's beautiful. And I'll tell you a couple things about the book.
Could you pass that around? Would you mind?
Oh, yeah. And a couple other things about myself. I'm kind of an apostate, according to my wife, because I'm just open to all faiths and all religions. And in fact, I love that you're Catholic. One of my best friends is Catholic. And I'll tell you how we met him in just a moment. But I wear a cross. And people are really surprised to see an LDS man that wears a cross. And they'll say, why are you wearing a cross? And I just look at him and I say, I wear a cross to irritate the Mormons. Because it's that cultural thing where we don't wear crosses. And it's just a cultural thing. There's no doctrine about crosses. It's just a cultural thing. And one day, I'm kind of vocal in a kind way. And that's why I tell my wife, I'm never leaving, because there has to be people like me that can show people what they're doing wrong. Not in a I'm never mean or aggressive, but I was in Sunday school, and they had that typical lesson about why we don't wear crosses, and I finally raised my hand, and I said, you know what? I respect our culture and our traditions, but I don't have, and this is the reason they give us in the LDS faith. We don't wear a cross because it symbolizes the death of Christ. And I just told him, I said, I don't have a single Christian friend that wears a cross thinking about the death of Christ. To them, it's a symbol of a living Christ. And that's why I wear mine. It's a symbol to me of a living Christ. And I wear it all the time wherever I go. I was teaching a bunch of young women how to make bread up in Heber, and they all looked at me like, it's so funny when people see me wearing a cross, especially if I walk into an LDS church wearing a cross. I went to Portland a while back, and I went to church with my friend and I was traveling on allegiance, so I didn't have extra clothes. So I just wore a sweater and jeans, right? And I had my cross on. People literally would walk up to me and look at the cross and walk away. They don't know what to say. So I kind of wear it to kind of break the culture and try to teach people that, it's not about one faith. It's all about all of us and about accepting people from all faiths. My dearest friend, who's a Catholic priest, the way we met him was through food. So during COVID, I was doing these classes in my home, online classes that people would take, and Father KK would walk on the trail up in Orem, and my other neighbor met him on the trail one day, and he said, we have a chef in our neighborhood, and Father KK is from India, and so I was doing a class on Indian food, and so my friend told him, he said, we have this chef in our neighborhood, and he's cooking Indian food this week. You should come and try his food. So Father KK came for dinner on Tuesday night, and he loved my food, by the way, which made me feel so good, because he said it made him feel like he was back home in India. But then he was there every Tuesday night for a year. He came to my home at the end of the class, and he would eat with us. And we got to be really, really close. And one day, I said, hey, Father, I'm talking in church on Sunday. Do you want to come? He said, absolutely. So he shows up to our church, and it was so beautiful. And so then one Sunday, my wife was gone, and he moved from Orem up to the Avenues. The oldest Catholic church in Salt Lake is up there, and he was called to be the father up there. So I thought, do I go to church or do I go to Mass today? And the Spirit just said, go to Mass. So I said, okay. So I got my car, and I drove up to Mass. And when I walked in the door, you should have seen his face. He was so happy to see me. In fact, after Mass, I was standing there. He was thanking the choir and stuff, and he said, Brad, would you raise your hand? was like, oh, okay, whatever. So I raised my hand in front of to the whole congregation and said, this is my Mormon friend, Brad, from my old neighborhood in Orem, and he drove up here today to support me in my ministry. That's what it's all about. It's so beautiful. Another funny story about that. This is kind of tells a little bit about our culture. So I had a friend visiting from Virginia who's Catholic, and he went to Catholic school, and so he came here to Utah, and I said, this is your Mormon immersion weekend. And he was like, okay, I'm in. And it was when they were having an open house for a temple, so we took him to the open house of the temple, which he loved. And you know, the Catholic faith, they love their art. And he loved the art in the temple. He was just so touched by it. And then on Sunday morning, we went to music and the spoken word. And then after that, I said, okay, there needs to be a balance. So we went to the cathedral downtown, which he loved. He absolutely loved that. And I told him the story about President Hinckley, where when they rededicated that, he called up the head guy there and said, I hear you're dedicating the temple. Would you like the tabernacle choir to sing? And they did, which was so beautiful. And my Catholic friend just loved that. And then we went to Mass with Father KK. And we go into Mass, and there again, he's so happy to see us. He waves at us from the pulpit. And we're sitting there, and I don't know how many of you have been to Mass before, but when you can go up when they offer the sacrament. If you're not Catholic, you just put your hands like this, and the priest will bless you. And so I love Father KK so much, and I wanted his blessing. So me and my friend, we get up, and we go up there, and I put my hands like this, and Father KK blesses me, and then my friend took the sacrament because he was Catholic, and we sat down, and my wife, who is this rigid Mormon woman, she was like, what happened? What just happened? We said, well, we were just blessed by Father KK. And she loves Father KK too. And she says, well, I want to be blessed by him too. So my friend, she would have done it for me, but for my friend, he said, Louise, just go up and put your hands like this and get a blessing. So she walked up, and Father KK blessed her, and she comes and she sits down and she's crying. And she told I had to apologize later. She told my friend, she said, I had no idea I would feel the Spirit because he doesn't have the priesthood of God. And I apologized to my friend later. I said, I'm so sorry. My wife just doesn't understand sometimes. And that's just that rigid Mormon training that I rebel. And that's why I call myself an apostate, because I love the faith, but the culture and traditions drive me crazy sometimes. And I just stand, and I'm not ever mean about it, but I will call people out on things, and I will say, are you really serious about that? That's really not what the Savior teaches. And it's a cultural thing. It's not and I kind of have this belief that we're all the Church of Christ anyway. It doesn't matter. We're all the Church of Christ. And yes?
When you told that story, I was really moved by how your wife was open to being blessed and moved and acknowledged that there was a deeply spiritual, authentic connection.
Yes, it was a life-changing experience for her, because I'll come home from events, because I go to I do a lot of men's work, and I'll go to events, and I'll say, oh, this Christian brother blessed me, and she always looks at me like, whatever. And the Spirit was so beautiful, and for her to have that experience was so beautiful, and she gained an understanding that the Spirit of God works everywhere. It's not just, and Mormons just aren't guilty of this. All faiths are kind of guilty of it, where they just think that, God works in their faith only, and anything outside of that faith is not part of God's work, which is not true. God works through all of his children. So that's kind of a little bit about me. And so let's talk about food. Isn't food a beautiful thing? I love food. And there again, my wife and I are in two different worlds when it comes to food. She eats to stay alive, and I live to eat. So we went on a trip a few years ago, and this is a perfect example of it. We were down in New Orleans, and it had been a rough day. We'd been to conventions all day long, and we were literally just starving. And so it was late at night, and she hates spending money on food. And we finally the only place we found that we could eat was this place where they charged you for the parsley. And it was late at night, and I think we could have been. Oh no! Before that, I wanted to go on a riverboat cruise, And on the cruise, they had a buffet on the cruise, which, doesn't that sound great to go down the river and eat like that? But she read the menu and it had turtle soup on there, so she said, no, I'm not going to go and pay. It was like $15 back then for this boat cruise. And so we stepped aside to have our argument, and I finally won. And we walked back up there, they were sold out of the buffet. So we got on the boat, and I was mad. I sat on the other end of the boat because I was so mad at her. Because here's the tinkling of silverware and the smells wafting up. And so I told her, I said, okay, look, you need to understand something. We were getting ready to go to Europe. I said, we're going to go to Europe. And I'm not going to have one regret about something that I could have eaten. So you just need to back up and let me eat whatever I want to eat in Europe. So her idea of food and mine is totally different. And anyway, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Isn't it beautiful that we're opposites? And yeah, it's beautiful. So anyway, food. I grew up in the restaurant business. My mom was a fabulous cook, although she never taught us anything. It was back in that area, where children are seen, not heard, and the only time we were allowed in the kitchen was to wash the dishes or clean up after her. But she never took the time to teach us anything. So here I am, a young man. I get called on a mission for the LDS Church, and my first missionary companion, I just loved him so much, and I wanted to fix him a special lunch one day. And I said, okay, Elder, you go in the other room, and I'm going to fix you lunch. Well, to me, the special lunch, and it might not sound too special, but to me, the special lunch was hamburger gravy. We've all had that over toast. I just thought that would be the best lunch ever. So, my mom never taught me how to do it, but I watched her, right? And the way she did it, she had a mason jar, and the mason jar was full of flour and milk and salt and pepper, right? That's how she made it. So I found a mason jar in the cupboard, and I put flour and milk and salt and pepper in it, and then I had my hamburger in the skillet, and I was frying it, and it was really greasy hamburger, and I had no clue that you're supposed to drain it. No one ever taught me that. So I just had this greasy, hot hamburger going there. So then I took this jar and I poured it over the greasy hamburger, and I started stirring, and it just turned into a big ball. A gluey hamburger ball. And my companion's like, is lunch ready? Elder, it's coming. And so at that point I panicked. So I ran into the bathroom and I pushed it in the toilet. And I flushed the toilet and it wouldn't go down. I had to stick my hand in the toilet and break it up in little pieces. I can't remember what I did for lunch, but whose fault was that? My mother's. My mother's. She should have taught us the basic things about cooking. And I teach that all the time to mothers, even grandmothers. We have a responsibility to teach those simple skills. Do my boys know how to make gravy? Boy, when they were 2 years old, I taught them how to make gravy. And when my boys were on their missions, it was beautiful. So when my one son was 12 years old, he was hanging out with my neighbor friend, and my buddy. They were hanging out. He would take him shooting paintball guns on Saturday mornings, which I think is a total waste of time. But anyway, they loved it. And so my son comes to me, this 12-year-old boy, he comes to me one day and he says, Dad, I want a new paintball gun. And I was like, okay. Which one do you want? He said, well, the one I want's like $140. And I was like, figure out how you're going to do it. So previous to that, one day this 12-year-old boy comes in to me and he says, Dad, I want to make bread. And I always let my children in the kitchen. I didn't start out like that as a dad, but I learned, and I let my children in the kitchen. And he said, I want to make bread. And I said, okay. I got everything ready for him. And he said, I want to do it by myself, because he was an arrogant little punk, right? He said, I want to do it by myself. And I said, okay. So I got everything set up for him in the kitchen. I said, okay, I'm out of here. He said, where are you going? You said you wanted to do it by yourself. He said, okay. So I left. And I came back about 3 or 4 hours later. And I walked in the kitchen, and it literally looked like a slurry bomb had gone off in my kitchen. There was flour on the ceiling. It was crazy. And I burst into tears. Not because of the mess, but on the counter were 5 perfect loaves of bread. Perfect. And my wife, that day, she told me, she said, I'm never making bread again. A 5-year-old outdoes, a 12-year-old outdoes that. Never do it again. So he had that experience, and so then my friend takes him out shooting paintball guns, and he's like, he wanted a paintball gun, and I said, figure it out. So what does this 12-year-old boy do? He goes in the kitchen and he makes bread and he sells it to all the neighbors until he earns $150, right? And so the story doesn't end there. A little bit later, the same neighbor friend comes down and he says, Brad, could you come and teach me how to make bread? I was like, no, I'm too busy today. And Chase, my 12-year-old son, said, Brother Lindsay, I can come and help you. And I looked at Brother Lindsay, you trust him? And he said, absolutely. So Chase went down and he made bread, taught Brother Lindsay how to make bread. He was impossible to live with after that. Because every time Brother Lindsay would bring us a loaf of bread, my son was like, I taught him everything he knows. The story doesn't end there. I got the most, and this is to me the most beautiful letters I could get as a dad with kids on a mission. Both of my boys sent me pictures of them making bread for the investigators, which I thought was so beautiful. And this is the story I want to tell about that. So often we never realize what the small and simple things we do that have the most lasting effects on our children or on our posterity. My mother made bread every Monday. Every Monday. If there wasn't homemade bread, something was up. And that was back in the days where it literally took her about 5 or 6 hours to make the bread by hand. Because you had to knead it, and then you let it rise, and you punch it down, and you let it rise, and then you put it in the bread pans, and you let it rise. It was a long process. But she did it every Monday. Never once, I'm sure, my mother never, ever, ever thought this thought. I'm doing this because one day my darling little boy is going to teach the world how to make bread. She never thought that. But that's exactly what happened. It made such an impact on me that I have literally taught, I can't even, hundreds of thousands of women how to make bread over the years.
And men.
And men. And to me, the smell of bread says you're home. They did a study out of BYU a few years ago that said that children that eat homemade bread from their mothers actually do better in school. They do better emotionally, socially, in all areas. And I pondered that for a long time. Why? Why would they do better? Why would just homemade bread do that to them? And this is why. Homemade bread is love. They felt loved. When their mother went through the effort of making homemade bread, they felt love. And that's what I kind of encourage parents to do. Sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day routine that we don't slow down enough to do the things that really matter. We don't want to deal with the mess. So this is a really personal story that I really hate sharing. It is in the book, but when my family was younger, I worked in the restaurant business. And my wife, when we got married, she's never cooked because she said, I married a chef, why should I cook? And so she doesn't cook. And so this was how it went at our house. I would come home, walk into the house, and of course they wanted dinner, right? But guess what I had to do before I fixed dinner? I had to clean the kitchen. And it made me so mad that I had to clean up before I fixed dinner. And I would yell and scream and lose my temper, and it wasn't a very pretty thing, right? And it's like, and my wife would get mad at me, and it's like, why are you getting mad at me? Why can't you just clean the kitchen before I get home? But it couldn't happen. And I know she had 5 kids. It was a hard thing for her to do. I understand that. But it still made me mad, and it got to the point where I would walk in and my family would disappear because they knew Dad was going to be mad. And it's like, you know I'm going to be mad. Why don't you just take 5 minutes and clean the kitchen? But of course, it never happened. It never, ever happened. Until one day, I realized an important principle. I realized the moment I step in the kitchen, I am performing Christ-like service for my family. And you know what? Just like that, it changed. Just like that, it changed when I understood what I was doing it for. And so it got to the point, and this is how it turned into with my kids. I would get a knock on my bedroom door at 10:30 at night. Hey, Pops, me and my bros are out here. Can you come out and fix us a snack? This is like 10:30 at night. And I'd walk out there, and how many bros did he have? Like 12 or 15 in my kitchen wanting to be fed. And you know what? I loved it. I absolutely loved it because I understood how important it is what a service feeding can be and how powerful food can be. But I want to tell you, those young men, they paid a price. I always gave them a personal priesthood interview, which is, are you reading your scriptures? Are you praying? How are you treating the girls? I mean, I asked them pretty pointed questions, and guess what? They kept coming back. So they really didn't mind, and it was the food that allowed that to happen. And that's kind of, you know, if you look at the life of Christ, so many times he fed them physically before he fed them spiritually. And I really love that. That's why I say the book Ministry in the Savior's Way, because it's about how the example of Christ, how he would feed people physically first, and what happens when you feed your family physically, it really does open a door. And I've learned that over the years. In Arizona, we did Third Sunday dinner, now we do it's like Third Sunday waffles, but because I do waffles every month, and a different waffle too, it's really fun. But in Arizona, we did what we call Third Sunday dinner, and we literally had anywhere from, probably about 70 was the norm, and the biggest one we had was 227 people for dinner. And it was so beautiful. And was it hard? Oh my goodness, yes. And the hardest part about it is my wife hated it at the time. That was the hardest part about it. She just harassed me about the money we were spending and the time spent. And then it was. And the thing about it was is I couldn't ask people to help, because I don't know if you're very, very familiar with Arizona, but they have the Mormon temple in downtown Mesa, and it's a really poor area. So the people, I've been in their homes, and I didn't want them bringing food cooked out of their kitchens to serve in my house. It was dangerous, because I've been in their homes where there were cats and dogs on the counter, and they just didn't have very good clean etiquette to do things. So I didn't want them, so I couldn't ask people to cook. I got around that by, we had some families from different countries, and the way I got around that is they would always say, what can we bring? What can we bring? And I didn't want them to bring anything. So the way I'd get around that is I'd say, you know what? Why don't you give me a list of your favorite recipes, and I will get this stuff, and you come and teach us how to do it. And that always worked perfectly. It always worked. But we never knew how many people were going to show up. But this is the other thing I learned about that whatever goes out the front door always comes back in the back door. When you're serving, it always works out that way. There were some Sundays where I didn't know how we could even afford to feed the people, but I made the commitment that we were going to do it every Sunday, and it was amazing the miracles that would happen. And miracle after miracle. We had people from the streets that would come and eat. I would make little cards and give them to the missionaries to hand out. And it was no proselyting in our home. That was the rule. One time they said they wanted to move Third Sunday dinner to the church, and I said, no, it's not a church activity, it's fellowshipping. And if you take it to the church, it's going to be about conversion, and it's not about conversion, it's about building community. And so I was really adamant about that. But we had some of the most unusual experiences. One guy, he would come, and he was just so scroungy. Oh my goodness, he was a street guy, right? And someone even said, why are you letting him come? And it's like, he's a son of God, let him come and eat. He needs food. So he would come in, but when he would walk in the door, I would walk up to him and walk in the kitchen with him, and I would say, let me serve you today. And I would take the plate and I would serve him. Do you want some of this? Because I couldn't have him. He was really that. But this was the beautiful story about him. It turned out that he was one of the lead guitarists for Led Zeppelin. And he had fried his brain from drugs. He just told, and he would always brag about, I was a lead guitarist for Led Zeppelin in my day, and one day I just got tired of hearing him brag about it, so I went and got my wife's guitar, and I handed it to him, and I said, buddy, show us what you've got. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. We were just all just blown away. It was just so amazing. But we had so many experiences like that just were life-changing, of bringing people into our home. And that's why I do Third Sunday dinner now, is to show people how to do it. When we open up our homes and our hearts, miracles happen. So for me, I tell this to people all the time, it's not about gender, it's not about politics, it's not about faith or which church you go to, it's about hearing someone's story. And you mentioned that earlier. You know who Brene Brown is?
Yes.
One of my favorite quotes from her is, everyone has a story that if you heard it, you would weep. Isn't it true? How about the guy you visited with? Didn't his story make you want to weep when you came to my home? Yeah, David.
Yeah.
His story just makes you want to weep.
David's not here.
Yeah, I think he's out of town.
Okay.
But everyone has a story. But you know what the problem with is in our culture? We don't make space to hear stories. We're so busy. And in our home, it's been so beautiful to watch my wife, her heart change as we brought people in our home that is totally against her norm of thinking. We have a dear friend, Bree Bowerman. I don't know if any of you know her. She's a transgender woman. She's absolutely beautiful. She's just the most remarkable woman. She's still married to her wife. And she came and shared her story in our home. And it was so beautiful to hear her story. And heartrending too, to hear what she's gone through and one of the funny parts about her story though, she didn't come out for a long time, but she loved clothes, so she would always buy these designer clothes for her wife. Well, her wife doesn't like designer clothes. She just likes the simple, so she just packed them all the way in the closet. And then when Bree finally came out to everyone and decided that he was going to be a she got all those clothes out of the closet. And she's the classiest dresser, oh my goodness. One day I told her, I said, Bree, we were commenting the other day about how good you looked at that event the other day. She said, just that day? She's just, she's a diva, But is what's so beautiful is her coming in our home and providing, like Jay does here, a safe space to hear stories. That's what it's all about. And that's why I love food so much. If we use it properly, it's a safe place to bring people. And we learn how to worship differently. We learn how to think differently. We had some Muslims in our home for dinner recently. And I'm really careful. I don't want to offend people. So I asked them, I said, hey, how do you bless the food? They were from Pakistan. How do you bless the food in your country? And they said, oh, Brad, we just raise our hands high above our head and say, thank you, God. And so that night around my dinner table, I had Muslims, I had Mormons, I had Christians, and I had an agnostic gay man there. And I try to accommodate everybody, but anyway, I just looked at her and I said, okay, tonight we're going to pray the way our friends here in Pakistan pray. And we're just going to lift our hands high above our head and say, thank you, God. And it was so beautiful. And I've done that since then. I'll tell the story and we'll do it. And it's so beautiful. You know what? This is kind of a funny story about culture and traditions. In the LDS faith, this is how we pray, isn't it? Have you ever asked anyone, why do we pray like that? What's the reason?
Tradition.
Tradition? What's the other reason?
Because when little kids are little, you keep them quiet that way.
That is exactly it. What does this mean in body language?
I'm close.
You're closed off, yeah. How do Christians pray, most of them? Yeah. And what's this for? They're ready to receive. And it's beautiful. One night, we had a bunch of Mormons in our home. It's when we moved in the neighborhood. I wanted to get to know all of our neighbors, so we had a dinner party. And I invited our Christian neighbor, the only Christian in the neighborhood, besides the Catholic priest, right? And so he comes to dinner, and we're all sitting there, and it was time to bless the food, and I walked up to Robert, and I said, Robert, would you offer the blessing? And Robert looked at me and he said, oh, Brad, don't you know I was new in the neighborhood. He said, don't you know I'm the out man here? I said, I was really puzzled. What do you mean? He said, well, I'm not a Mormon. I go, oh my gosh, you're not a Mormon? Then you can't pray. And I said, Robert, of course we want you to pray. And it was so beautiful. He had everyone, and you see my big front room, it's huge. He had everyone, there were like 60 people there. When I said it was time to pray, he had everyone stand up. They stood in a circle. They held hands. And he not only blessed the food, he blessed everyone in the room. It was so beautiful. And so that's the thing I tell people about, inviting other people in your home from other faiths. You learn how to worship differently. You learn how to pray differently. And it's not about converting people from other faiths. It's about understanding about their faith. And whether they're Muslims. I was talking to my Muslim friends, and I said, hey, have you read that article in LDS.org about Mormons and Muslims? They were like, oh my goodness, yes. We have a lot in common, don't we? It was so beautiful. And then they told me the story why they were at BYU. They were students at BYU. They said, we wanted to go to America to a college, and our parents were like, absolutely not, because of all the party and stuff, until they read the honor code for BYU. Their parents read the honor code, and they said, this is where you're going, to this school, because they love the honor code. Did you know this? And I love this. Did you know that at BYU they have a room set aside for Muslims to pray in the Wilkinson Center? Isn't that so beautiful? I just think that's so beautiful. That's a great example of how we should be. And this is a question I ask, because I deal a lot with LDS women, because I go to relief societies and stuff. And it drives me crazy, but I ask this question. When was the last time you invited someone to your home for dinner that's not a member of your faith or a member of your ward? I've never had anyone raise their hand. Isn't that so sad? We just, but you know, I don't think we're the only ones guilty. I can't remember when the last time my Catholic friends invited me to dinner, or my Christian friends invited me over for dinner. So I think we're all guilty, but how are we going to change it? By being the first ones to do it. By just opening up our homes and inviting people in. You know, one of the things I've learned is people from other cultures too, they love to share their food. They love to share. So if you have people in your neighborhood or that go to your church or congregation that are from another country, what a great way to build a friendship. Just go up to them and say, hey, would you like to come and cook dinner at my house? And that's why the Muslims were in my home. They were at a party in our park, and I said, would you guys like to come and cook dinner for us? We'll buy the food, just tell us what you need. And they were so thrilled to come and show their culture off to us in our home. And so we just need to do that more, open our homes up more, and invite people in. And it doesn't matter what their faith is, what their gender is, political, it doesn't matter. We're all sons and daughters of God, and we all have a story to share, and a story we can learn from someone else. Especially if you have younger children. I have a friend, this is kind of a funny story. Her son married a Catholic woman. And I don't understand why it's offensive. I don't get that, why they think that's offensive, right? But it offended her to do that. And I said, you know what, you just need to change that. I said, let me tell you a simple way to do that. Because for some reason, Father, Son, Holy Ghost was offensive to her. And I said, just go, I love my family enough to pray the way they pray. And so she started doing that. The first time she did it, her grandkids were like, Grandma, you're praying with us. It made them so happy, and it made her happy because she crossed that line of tradition and culture, doing something that was uncomfortable to her. And I do this all the time in my home. And my family looks at me and I love my family. and it drives my family crazy because I pray differently all the time. I'm not afraid to. And it's important that we allow our children and our grandchildren to see different ways of worship, different ways of praying, different ways of doing things, instead of being trapped in this little tunnel vision that is hard to get out of. I think the culture in all the churches are changing, where they're becoming more open and more accepting of people from all different parts of life. I feel that's happening, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So a couple things about the book. I wasn't going to put recipes in the book when I wrote the book. I just wanted to write a book, because I have a lot of recipe books out there. So I just wanted to write a book. And so I went to a funeral one day, and for me, the veil is kind of thin between us and the other side, right? And I felt like I was surrounded by my ancestors, my grandma and grandpa, family that had gone on. I felt like I was surrounded by them, and they said, you need to put recipes in the book. I was like, okay, and they gave me a list of the recipes. And they were family recipes to put in the book. And so I remembered them, and they said, and don't just put the recipe in, you have to tell the story. And then this is how come I know it was angels, because I wouldn't have thought about this. The parting words they said to me was, food has the power like nothing else to connect past, present, and future generations. And you think about that. You think about something your grandmother made, how when you eat it, she's right there. Or a memory about food when you taste something. I was telling this story to a woman, and she said her grandmother and grandfather met in England on their mission. And so one of the traditions was Yorkshire pudding. You all know what Yorkshire pudding is? Yeah. It's this delightful little bread they put under a roast in England, and the drippings fall down and the bread grows, and it's absolutely delicious. So their grandmother used to make for them all the time. Well, Grandma and Grandpa passed away, and her and her husband were going to England. So she told her husband, we're going to have Yorkshire pudding when we get to England. So they got to England, and they were walking down the street. And it says, as they were walking down the street, a cafe put out a sign, today's special Yorkshire pudding. And she said, we're going. So they went in and they sat down, and she said, I kid you not, it was as if Grandma and Grandpa were right there with us as we enjoyed the Yorkshire pudding. That's kind of the legacy we need to leave with our children and our family, that when they eat something that we've made, they remember us and they think about us. And my great-grandmother, this is a great story about my great-grandmother, she made pies, and she made the best pies ever. She made her last pie when she was 99 years old. And this is a story about that pie. In fact, her pie recipe is in the book. And that story's in the book, but this is a story about her pie. My aunt, one day, it was like Tuesday morning, she took over a bottle of Tide detergent and set it on the counter for Mamie to wash her laundry with. Well, 2 days later, she went back, and there was a beautiful cherry pie on the counter, and there was about this much of the soap missing in the jar. And my aunt went, oh, she did it. She took a knife, and she stuck it in and tasted it. Yeah, she made it with soap. And she asked Mamie what happened, and Mamie said, oh, I wondered why it bubbled so when I put the sugar in it. So those kind of memories, food is all about memory. Food just brings people together like nothing else. So I did something really fun in the book that I love. We have done this for years in our home, and I was telling you how I met my neighbors, is before COVID, I did 4 of these hands-on dinner parties that are in the book. And a hands-on dinner party is where you invite as many people as you want in your home. And you know, this is what I've learned. People always say, well, my home isn't nice enough, or I don't have enough room. When we lived in Arizona, our house was probably this big. It was so tiny. And that's the house where we had 200 people there for dinner. And we would literally stand so close together you could hardly move. No one ever cared about the size of my house or what it looked like. They were connecting. It was really, really beautiful. Now I have this huge house. It's so much fun, but we did it in this small house. And a hands-on dinner party, I've done these in little tiny kitchens, and I've done them in great big kitchens. It doesn't matter. They're magical. And the way a hands-on dinner party works is you invite over 15 to 100 friends, and you set up stations in your kitchen. So you'll have the station right over here. Let's say you're doing the Mexican one, okay? So you have this station set up for the salsa, the guacamole. And then you have a station set up here for rice and beans. A station set up here for tortillas. A station, whatever you're mixing, whatever you're fixing, for the meat, whatever. You have these stations, and then in the station, you have everything they need in that station to cook it with. So you kind of work your kitchen where if they need a stove, you have them next to the stove, or you have a little stove there, or a pressure cooker at that station. And the way I did in the book is I have the recipe and every single piece of equipment you need. Everything you need for that recipe that you set on the table. And it's really cool, you can scan it and print it off. And there's 3. There's an Italian one, there's an Americano one, which is the newest one I just did, which was so delightful. I just did this one up in Portland. And one of the recipes in that is old-fashioned Caesar salad. Most of us know what an old-fashioned Caesar salad is, where they make it in the bowl, where you smash the anchovies. Has anyone ever had that kind of Caesar salad? Where you smash the anchovies and the garlic and the lemon and the pepper, you just smash it, and then you add, I think, mustard to it, and then you slowly drizzle the olive oil until, you add an egg, a coddled egg, and then you mix that up, and then you slowly drizzle the olive oil until you have this beautiful Caesar salad dressing. Well, when I did this up in Portland recently, they were all like, anchovies, we're not going to eat that. They were just like, it's in a Caesar salad. That's what a Caesar salad is. That was the most popular item on the menu that night. They could not believe that a Caesar salad could taste that good. So that's what the hands-on dinner parties are for. And I tell you, I've done so many of those. I did one up in in Idaho a couple years ago. And I was up there doing an event where I was teaching for 4 or 5 days. And so on Friday night, all the wives usually bring their husbands so they can meet the man that's made them buy so much stuff all week long. So they're there, and this one man walks in, and he was just honoring. I didn't like him at all. First impression, I didn't like him at all. And he was just harassing me all night long. And I harassed him back, right? And so finally it got to the time where it was time to sit down and eat, and I ended up sitting right next to him for dinner, and we just kind of bantered back and forth, and then we cleaned the kitchen together, and then it was like 10 o'clock at night, and Sam comes up to me and says, "So, Chef Brad, I have a few questions for you. Can you answer them?" I was like, "Bring it on, buddy." The next time I looked at the clock, it was 11:30. All the women were in the back of the room wondering what was going on with their husbands. All the men were gathered around, and we had the most beautiful discussion. We talked about things that men don't talk about. We talked about pornography and all the things that men are dealing with. I mean, it was the most beautiful discussion, and these men were so engaged. It was absolutely beautiful. So then they all go home about midnight. The next morning, the women all come back, and they were like, "What did you do to our husbands last night? We have never seen them that engaged." And this is what I taught them. At 6 o'clock, that experience wouldn't have happened because we didn't even like each other at 6 o'clock. But after cooking and eating and connecting together, we had created a safe container where we felt we could communicate and talk. And that's what food can do. And now Sam and I, we're best friends. In fact, he called me on Monday morning after that. He called me and he said, "So I went to church yesterday, and guess what I talked about?" And he talked about some of the things I taught him about connection. And he said, "But the reason I'm calling you is I understand you have a pizza oven." And he said, "I want to buy a pizza oven because I want to create community." And and I told him about being authentic and open. So this is the story about Sam. He had just been called as a very young bishop to his ward. And I told him about how important it was to be authentic. And so the next morning, he's in Sunday school, and the Sunday school teacher says, "So today we're going to talk about the thorn in Paul's side. Do any of you have a thorn in your side you'd like to talk about?" And here's Sam saying, "I heard Chef Brad tell me I have to be authentic." And so he said, I raised my hand, and he said, this newly called bishop, right? He said, I raised my hand, and he said, I told my ward that their bishop struggled with impure thoughts on a daily basis. And he said, then I sat down and I thought, what have I done? I'm the new bishop in this ward. What have I done? And he said, they had the most beautiful discussion he's ever been in because he set the stage to be authentic and open, and everyone opened up. So then he called me and said, I want to get a pizza oven, and I want to invite people to my property and create community. And I've been up there 3 or 4 times since then. He built this big thing outside with this big pizza oven, and it's just absolutely amazing what he does in creating community. And I always tell people the best investment you could buy, especially young families, is a pizza oven for the backyard. We have literally baked 1 billion pizzas in our pizza oven, and it is the best thing for youth and just the neighborhood and the community to bring them over. I just want to give you a word of advice though. If you're cooking pizza for Mormons, don't tell them if you put beer in the pizza dough. It'll really irritate them. I did that one time in Mesa, and they said, we love your pizza dough, what did you do? And I said, you don't want to know. Oh, we really do want to know. No, you really don't want to know. So I didn't tell them until after dinner. And finally they just harassed me, and I told them they didn't want to know. They were mad at me that I put beer in their pizza dough. But if you ever make pizza dough, try beer in it. It's really good. It really takes it to the next level. So anyway, do you guys have any questions? Any thoughts
or your stories? I'll start with one real quick. Jane, left the church, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, but she decided that our Sunday meals would be her sacrament for the family. And so all our kids come over.
That's
Sunday, except Michelle, because she's way up in Alaska. But it's been a beautiful thing, and the kids love to come, and I just really appreciate that about her. That she's created that, what you've talked about, that food and they're developing memories. And our oldest son, a number of years ago, got a pizza oven, and we would go over there, and then he'd bring it up to my house, and then I kind of ruined it for him, so he gave it to me. And he bought his own. So now we both have pizza ovens, and they are really good.
They're a great way to connect. Yeah, they're a great way to bring people. And you know, I love the what you said about sacrament. I think we all of our faiths have a sacrament that's involved, and I think we don't understand the covenant of the sacrament, whatever it is, Catholic, Christian, whatever, or you doing it in your home. There's a covenant that comes with sacrament, and the covenant is when we make that covenant with the sacrament, we are literally taking upon us the name of Christ, and that allows us to know how to minister. So in the covenant of the sacrament, what does it talk about? We take upon us the name of Christ, and what does he give us in return? His Spirit to be with us always. And what is that Spirit for? So we know how to minister to those around us. And one of the things I've learned is we get so caught up in our world. I ask when I wake up in the morning, who do I minister to today? And there's a few ministering tricks. In fact, after every recipe in here, I have a Chef Brad ministering tip. But here's a simple one. How much food do you throw away in your home? Think about that. A lot, huh? I've learned a simple trick. I've learned a really simple trick. Just go to the restaurant supply store or order on Amazon the little styrofoam clamshells, right? And as what I do is if I have leftover, I'll fill it up in a clamshell and I'll have my kids, well, my kids aren't home anymore, but when they were, I would have them take it to a neighbor. And we kind of feel like even the older people in our ward, even the older couples, we think, oh, they're getting along fine, they don't need my food. I've taken food to a woman in our neighborhood and Paula, just the sweetest older woman. And one day she looked at me, she said, why do you bring me food? And kind of crankety, right? And I said, Paula, don't you get tired of your own cooking? And she went, oh yes, thank you so much. And we don't think about that. We think that they're capable, they're doing it, but we don't think that a simple, and like with pizza, I tell people, order the pizza boxes on Amazon, and when you make pizza, there's always leftover dough. Be intentional about making extra pizza and taking it to a neighbor. It is so beautiful. Simple things like that, especially if you have children at home. What a great thing to teach them when you have a little bit of leftover food to, hey, why don't you take this to the neighbor down the street? And teaching them that principle of ministry. I mean, really, our whole purpose here in life is to minister to other people, isn't it? That's really what we're here for. To bless the lives of everyone around us. It doesn't matter their faith. It doesn't matter. Just learning how to minister.
So in college, we had a member of the ward from Australia that was getting a rabbinical degree at the University of Judaism because the best schools in Australia were Jewish. And they were okay with him being a Mormon, getting a rabbinical degree, as long as he had the degree. So he taught us the Seder dinner and showed us the symbolism of Christ all the way through the Seder dinner and gave us a booklet. And so after our last get-together last month, they gave me the tray. And the tray had 3 pieces of matzah on it, which I didn't realize till I got home. And when I saw that and I was teaching the next Sunday, I said, I need to show the ward what the Seder dinner actually is. And I had 3 pieces of matzah miraculously, which I don't usually have. And it was a lesson. I've had more comments, I think, about that and the remarkable symbolism of Christ. And then they have 3 matzahs that are hidden. They take the middle one out, they break it, and they hide half of it in a low space in a linen cloth. And then later on they bring it back. And that gets broken into bite-sized pieces, which you then share with everybody there, which clearly is where Christ did the first Sabbath.
Yeah, yeah.
And so their whole thing, they're all the way through that. And it's actually interesting to me that God wanted them to remember the Passover. So what did he do? He instituted a meal every single year that had all the lessons in it they had to remember.
Yeah.
And they did it. They all remember. They still do them. I mean, it's interesting. That was the way God had his people
My Jewish friends in Arizona invited me to dinner one night. It was one of their traditional annual dinners. And they said, you're the token Gentile here tonight. And they said, and I love this concept. They said, we didn't invite you here to convert you. We invited you here so you could understand our traditions and our culture. And isn't that what it should be about when we invite people from other faiths in our home? It's not about converting them. It's about learning. Tell me about your faith. What do you do to worship Christ or whoever? Yeah.
You look at me? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I don't see you. My wife and her twin sister, they have this Mexican heritage, and often, what I really have come to enjoy, they'll get their kids together and friends, and they make tamales, with corn husks, and it's good. And then we've come to know a Japanese man who is here, and he's sort of an artist and a musician. He's enigmatic, but he, I remember once we were talking with him what he wanted to do, and he said, I'd like to come over. He had been with them before, and I'd like to come, let's cook some more. And he's come over and learned to make tamales, and he's showed us how to make some of his Japanese food. It is really wonderful tradition that my wife and her twin sister do, and it is really it's a wonderful community builder and source of friendship.
I've noticed other cultures are better at that than Americans. I mean, the Hispanic culture, they're very warm and welcoming about doing stuff like that, and other cultures are. I tell people that I look like a gringo, but I'm really puro Latino dentro. Pure Latin. When I lived in Arizona, I cook amazing Mexican food, and my green corn tamales, you would love them. They're so good. But the reason is I would meet people at church in the Spanish wards, and I would invite myself to dinner. Sure. And they love that. Oh my goodness, I'd say, or we'd be at a function and they'd make us salsa. If I come over, will you teach me how to make that? Yeah. They love doing that, and we don't take advantage of that enough. When I go to an Asian store, I go up and ask people what to do, how to cook things. People love that.
Yeah, often you don't realize the impact you're having on the circles around you or the next generations. My brother-in-law, a host of many tamale making dinners, told the story of how our nephew, they went camping together, and he told him how much he loved making tamales as a boy at their house. And so that prompted my brother-in-law to do another tamale making session. But we wouldn't have known that about my nephew if they hadn't had that conversation about how much it meant to him, that tradition.
Yeah. And I love the point that you made that we really don't think about the long-term effects of the things we do today. How is that going to affect someone, what I'm doing today? How is that going to affect my grandchildren or my neighbors or my community? And we don't think about that enough. We're not intentional in the things that we do to understand the lasting effects of. It's so important that we're intentional about what we do and understand that every little thing we do, there's that ripple effect that goes out, and be intentional about what kind of ripples do we want to create.
Yeah, and sometimes I think it's so beautiful that the ripples just happen anyway. So I'm thinking about my grandfather who, I don't think he was being intentional at all, and he hated to throw away food. He would throw away anything. And as a result, I associate the smell of rotten fruit with my grandfather.
Oh my goodness.
And I am, actually, it's been a profound thing for me because when, like making there, I'm a weird Mormon. And when I moved back to Utah, I was mortified about moving back to Utah because weird Mormons are more accepted outside of Utah. And we moved into this neighborhood, we were settling down forever, and I was having a really hard time moving this house. And this house has this big, beautiful apricot tree. And it's just like my grandpa is sitting out there, and he's good at all the things I'm bad. He's jovial, like I'm just super anxious, like I don't think he ever felt anxiety. Like it's just, he probably did, but and so the food, and he would drink, he would just take canned peaches, he'd can his own peaches, and he'd just pour them in the blender with ice and drink it. And sometimes I'll do that just to lower my level of anxiety. Or I'll go sit on the apricot tree, and it's like I can just feel his presence.
That's so true.
Well, he used to make the popcorn and take it around to the...
Oh yeah, he had a garden, he'd take tomatoes around the neighborhood.
Wander around,
He
get food.
he had this
people
peanut
and stuff.
brittle, big peanut brittle thing that he'd make. I hated peanut brittle. So that wasn't something I was able
But
to
good
do.
memories, though. I mean, so one of the recipes in here that I love. So when I grew up, we ate. It was a standard in our home. My grandpa owned cafes in Gallup, New Mexico in the 1940s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the signature items in his cafe was deep fried French toast.
Mm-hmm.
So when we grew up, my mother would fry it in a cast iron skillet with Crisco, her homemade bread. And oh my goodness, it was so good. The first time I went out of the house and had French toast, I figured the waitress brought me the wrong thing. Because this is not what French toast is supposed to be. So my family have grown up on deep fried French toast. My brother, on the other hand, I had his kids over this last year for dinner, and I said, we're going to have a recipe that Grandpa used to fix all the time. And I made him deep fried French toast, and they were so mad at their dad that he had never made that for them. So, yeah, and that's something. My grandpa's been dead since 1970, I think he died. And yet deep fried French toast is something that, and he probably had no idea that tradition would continue. But you guys try the recipe if you get the book, it's so good. And I've done that for third Sunday dinners, where we've literally fried up 800 pieces of bread outside with big camp burners and Crisco. I don't use Crisco anymore. I use refined coconut oil. It fries as good as Crisco, but it's better for you. But anyway, there's some fun. Food is meant to be fun. Food, closing thought, I'll just tell you this thought. God in his amazing power could really do anything he wanted. I mean, think about the children of Israel. He created manna for them when they needed to eat. And he could create any way he wanted for us to eat. But he did the way we do it now with a purpose. Because there's so much to learn around food. I mean, there's just so much to learn from that our children learn, our grandchildren learn, that we learn. Even the messes, even the disaster that we have in our kitchens, it's okay. Those are okay. I had a friend of mine, a young mother, who I kept telling her, you need to let your daughters, she had 6 daughters, you need to let them cook. She was one of those mothers that just controlled everything, and she's like, I can't do it. Because if the kitchen was out of, and then one night she comes to my class, and she literally walks in the class and she's shaking. And I went, Marnie, what's wrong? She said, I just left my daughters home making bread on their own. And she was so traumatized, but it was a life-changing experience for her daughters. Now, for years after that, they would do fundraisers making bread and pizzas, and it was, so we need to allow, the mess is wonderful. I don't mind washing dishes because I think about all the magic that happened. I don't mind spending hours and hours cleaning up because it's not about the mess, it's about the memories that were built around the mess. That's what we need to keep in mind instead of thinking, oh my goodness, I gotta clean all this up. And I really don't. In fact, my children hang this over my head all the time. I'll ask them, hey, could you come in the kitchen and help me wash the dishes? They'll say, Dad, remember you're performing Christ-like service. They remind me that, anyway, but they're still great about helping, so yes.
I appreciate what you have to say, and I know that the reason that we have to eat is so that we recognize our needing continually the bounty from God. Nevertheless, if I ever make my own world, my one point is eating will be a recreational activity. You can do it if you want, but you don't have to.
My wife would get along great. We talk about this all the time. She says in her world there won't be any food, and I said, well, we're going to be in different worlds because my world's all about food.
If you want to go have fun with
It's like
food,
tennis.
do
You
it.
ever play tennis?
See, I couldn't live in a world that wasn't. Yeah. The most important part of it.
It's recreation, so
It's optional.
It is optional, yes. So I just
Do you like eating food? It's just the fixing it.
She
you
makes
don't
some
like.
great
No.
cakes. She can
I
cook.
make a dynamite carrot cake, and my greatest error was going to Seder at my sister-in-law's house and think I need to bring something. The only thing I know how to make that's presentable to people is carrot cake. There's leavening in carrot cake.
They probably forget you that.
That was a death sentence in the Exodus. Anybody who brought leaven in, they were banished.
Well, her grandson is now, so I think
It's known as the yeast-waste divide.
but it's just, yeah, I know how to cook. I'm a very good cook. I just don't like it.
Yeah,
You have to do it. So my sister knows me, and I have a banner in my kitchen that says, I only have a kitchen because it came with the house.
And I appreciate that. We're all in
Yeah.
different places. Yeah.
And I love that everybody's different.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, I love leftovers. Cook once a week and just eat it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's good.
I really like that movie. My sister, actually, several members of my family have seen that show known as.
Yes.
Oh, that's adorable.
What is it called?
And that's a good one.
Donuts.
No,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Grandma's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
About my
Steve,
restaurant
my
in
friend
Staten
Steve told me
Island.
about this.
And I think my family, well, my dad didn't always communicate well with my mother, so sometimes he would just meet somebody at church who was visiting there. Sometimes the person might have had, some mental health issues or whatever, but he would just sort of invite him over and not always tell my mother ahead of time. But we did have the experience growing up having people stay with us. We had people, strangers would stay with us sometimes because they needed a place to stay for long periods of time. I don't see that happening as much now, but somehow, we survived, not just molested or anything with strangers. So, but we had that practice. My dad also wasn't the best cook, but he did learn to make grind wheat and make wheat bread. And we had a lot of that growing up. And I think I know it kind of often fell apart in my lunch container, but I think it impressed other people that I had homemade wheat bread.
If you guys like good movies about food, The 100-Foot Journey is I think
I love that
one of my
movie.
favorite
What's it
ones.
called?
And then The 100-Foot Journey.
100th.
Yeah, and then something I've gotten really kind of addicted to lately are the Korean rom-coms. That, oh my goodness, the food in those movies is so beautiful. I like the ones on Netflix that are dubbed. But I'll throw out a couple titles. The Castaway Diva is really beautiful. The Extraordinary Attorney Woo is wonderful. Move to Heaven is really good. And one of my favorite ones is Heavenly Ever After. I'll give you just a short thing. This woman, she's married to this man who was a paraplegic for most of their married life, right? And she adored him, and she was kind of grumpy and cranky. Well, on his deathbed, when he's dying, she's 80 years old, and he says, "You've never been more beautiful than you are right now," right? And so then he dies. So a couple of years later, she dies. And when you go to heaven, according to the movie, when you go to heaven, you have an interview, and you get to choose your age. But you can't reverse it. Once you make the choice, it's stuck. So she's sitting there thinking, oh, I could be 25 and beautiful again. And then she says, but my husband said I've never been more beautiful at 80. So she chooses 80 and gets into heaven, and he's 25. And it is just adorable. And he adores her. It's so cute.
There's one called Eternity that this woman has to choose between the husband she lost when she was young and the husband she was with when she was old.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
That's kind of what was a similar thought. That's a fun movie from a non-LDS perspective.
Yeah, it was good.
But the afterlife's like everybody goes to like a big train terminal and they get to choose which place they want to go to. It's like there's a place for women only, a place for gay people. There's a place for people that only like Germany, but only the Weimar period. And they get to choose all these different places that they get to go to, and then she has to make this choice which husband she wants to be.
That was a great movie. I watched it. It was really good.
Yeah.
We got to call this.
Steve's got his hand up,
Okay,
so,
Steve. And then,
I just want to add, at age 90, my very Mormon father had the idea of having a block party. He lives in Metro Salt Lake. So at that age, he printed out a very nice save the date posting and went door to door. I walked with a cane, knocked on every door, personally met with every family, and people showed up. I'm comparing this to your version of the same thing. And, half to 2/3 of the street is LDS, and they came. But Dad was really set on having people come that he wasn't used to seeing their faces in the local ward. And long story short, Dad asked his 5 children to man the barbecue or the cooking and the organizing because Dad and Mom couldn't get around to do that. And we finished that event by taking a group photograph. And now 4 years later, Dad has passed, and that picture still sits on Mom's refrigerator door.
Oh, that's beautiful.
With a posting as to what it is, and just a reflection back on all the conversations that you're alluding to from your events.
And there isn't a set way to do it. Everyone does it different. And I think it's up to us individually to seek the guidance of the Spirit to teach us how to minister in our way. Because, like, I love what you do with your sacrament. That's just so beautiful. And just find ways where you can all do it. We all do it different, but we really do need to be intentional about finding ways to create community with food. So
that's beautiful.
I'll set the cards back
Thank
by
you.
the trees.
So,
I want to hear what you made with Tesla.
you can get this on Amazon. He's sold out. That's why he's bringing copies of that. It's also, I got the Kindle version, which you can't sign, but it's a fun book to read. He did a good job of it. Brad, thank you for traveling all the way up here.
My pleasure.
That was entertaining.
So for refreshments back there, there's little Italian lemon cakes. They're delightful. They're made with olive oil and ricotta cheese. They're so good. And then there's little miniature carrot cakes with the cream cheese frosting. So help yourself, because I asked them, it's like 30 to 40 people that come. So there's probably 80 of them there. So feel free to take a few home.
I lied to him so I could have more.
No, but really take some home and enjoy them.
We got some people.
That's what they're there for.
Do you have a bakery? You produce?
I have a bakery in my basement.
But do you sell your? Where can you buy food?
Where what?
Where can you buy your food?
At my house.
I just said your house.
So come for the third Sunday. You can maybe get
Can
some.
we clap for you, because that was a
We would
wonderful
Yes. Do you want to take a bow? That was worth thinking about one. That was really good. If you look at my notes on my phone, it's interesting. So last month I had Darren Perry, and it was an Indigenous wisdom thing. I don't know, were some of you there? Yeah, that was. So we actually did hold hands and pray while an Indigenous prayer was given, while a drum and flute. It was just gorgeous. It was beautiful. But I have in the past had people hold hands, and then we actually share the prayer. In other words, everybody says something around the room. So I would love to everybody stand up, and we hold hands, and do that. And you did a great preface tonight, talking about how you've done that. So I'll just start, and again, this is not any particular faith as usual. So you can say what's ever on your heart. And it could be just something you're grateful for, or a hard ask of God. Say, man, why do I need this? So it's whatever you feel is on your heart. Okay. Oh, dear God, we are so grateful to be here. I thank you for Brad being here, traveling all that distance, and for the wisdom that he shared with us in his good heart and his love. Let's go with you, Mike, if that's okay.
Grateful for Brad's gift of sharing love through food, and we pray that that might help all of us to realize what gifts we have that we've been given to bless the lives of thy children that need it.
Please help us all to be villagers, participating villagers of the villages we want to be in.
Father, lead us to healthy ingredients so that we can have stronger bodies in a world where things are not always healthy despite their packaging.
Dear God, we're grateful for the variety of people in the world, that we all have our gifts, and may we find our gifts and share them.
And may we have the courage necessary to open ourselves up so that we can freely share and freely receive.
Lord, we pray that we might every day appreciate the majesty of thy love and the effect it can have on us if we open our hearts to it, and that we may also be able to utilize this love to love each other regardless of our differences.
Mother and Father, we're also happy that you're sharing your knowledge with more people in the world, and that they are sharing it with us so that we can expand our learning.
Bless us to take from this food the joy and also turn and serve others.
I'm grateful for every opportunity that I have to cook for my grandchildren, my children, and my friends.
Grateful for the connection that sharing food can bring.
Father, bless this group to find ways to share their talents in creating community.
In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Okay. Yay for our team.
So
great.
appreciate
You know, the
that.
movie I was gonna mention.
My kids are
13.
Which one?